Hey guys, it's Mrs. Millot. I know this is not your typical way of getting lessons, but we're going to give it a whirl and see how it works. We're going to start chapter 10 today. It is the last chapter that we're going to do in the book. And don't forget, your assignments are due October 25th, okay? So all marking period assignments are due October 25th. So when we're done with the lesson and you're done watching today, that's the stuff that I want you to work on. The large majority of you are nowhere near done getting all of them done. So hopefully you're working on them. So chapter 10 is all about vital signs and what they call fundamental skills, which would also include measuring height and weight. So first of all, the word vital means essential to life. And sign is an objective finding, meaning that you can measure it. So something that you can measure that's essential to life. This would be your temperature, your pulse, your respirations, and your blood pressure. The majority of these function on what we call homeostasis, or this ability of our body to maintain our balance. You probably have learned that word in science class by now, but our body is constantly working to maintain this equilibrium or balance, whether it is keeping our temperature in check, our pulse within a certain amount of beats per minute, our respirations, and so forth. And we have a lot of chemical activities and things going on in our body, and food being broken down and all kinds of stuff going on. And so a byproduct of all those chemical changes that are happening is heat. Well, that has a lot to do with our temperature. We have an area in our brain called the hypothalamus. It's in our brain, and you're more than welcome to check out the flip screen, or I'll show it to you when I get back. But it's an area in your brain that monitors your temperature, and it keeps it within about a degree of what is normal for you. So it maintains all these chemical reactions that are going on, and it makes your body do things to keep it within a certain degree of what is normal for you. So for instance, if your temperature goes up, your hypothalamus sends a signal through the nerves to your blood vessels to make your blood vessels open up or dilate, which causes the blood flow to go through a little quicker, and it causes it to get closer to your skin. The heat from your body then is released onto your skin, and you sweat. That's just an example of one way. There's actually 4 different categories of the way that we lose heat in our body. The first is convection. This is when you transfer or lose heat because of a liquid or gas that surrounds you. So think about this. Think about it's July and it's really, really hot, and you run and you jump into a pool. The temperature of the pool is not your body temperature, okay? And at first, the temperature of the water feels really cold, but after a while, that water cools you off and you don't really notice it anymore. That kind of transfer of heat is called convection. Radiation is also another way that we transfer heat. That is any transfer of heat either to the body or from the body in the form of heat rays. So the sun radiating out from us, heat waves coming off of our skin. All of those things are examples of radiation. Evaporation is the third way that we lose heat, and that kind of has to do with what we were talking about before, when your body senses that you're hot and it makes some changes happen with your blood vessels, causing them to dilate and the blood to come closer to your skin, and it releases sweat on your skin. Well, when you sweat, that sweat then gets evaporated, and that process of that liquid turning to a gas cools your skin down. And so that's a third way that we lose heat. And then the fourth way is conduction, where you transfer heat due to direct contact. And the way that I keep track of the difference between convection and conduction is that conduction has a D, and that is direct contact. But so imagine it's summertime or it's May and it's hot out and you're outside in gym and you come in from gym and you put your arm on one of the desks, it's going to be cold. The desk is cold. And so you can transfer your heat or cool the temperature of your arm down because of the temperature of the desk being so cool. And so that transfer of heat is called conduction. You can follow along here in those slides that are handed out there for you. There's 4 ways, as we talked about. I have a picture there of a baby. Remember, I used to be in labor and delivery, and my last job was teaching new nurses about stuff like this. So when babies are first born, they can actually lose heat in all 4 methods. So because of the gas or the air that's circulating around them, if it's cooler, which it will be, if it goes over the baby, it can cool the baby. The heat radiating off of the baby's head is radiation. If we put them on a cold bed and the bed is cold, then they can lose heat through the process of conduction. And last but not least, when babies are born, they have liquid on them, and it's called amniotic fluid. And as it evaporates, they can lose heat through the process of evaporation. So as you can see, babies actually can lose heat in all 4 ways, and that's one of the things that we really have to monitor when a baby's first born. So let's look more in detail about temperature. If your temperature is elevated, you guys would probably call it a fever. I would call it hyperpyrexia. That can happen through medication, excitement, activity, heart problems, an elevated temperature, any of those kinds of things. You can have a lower temperature called hypothermia, and that can be from medications or heart problems. There are 4 ways that your book talks about taking temperature, and we actually have another one. Oral is the first one. That is when you take someone's temperature in their mouth. Rectal is when you take temperature in the rectum. Axillary is under the arm. Tympanic is in their ear. And the one that's not in your book is called temporal. It's one of those ones that you wave across the forehead and get a temperature. When I get back, if you guys can behave yourselves, I'll actually get out my thermometers and you can try one of them out. The most accurate, or what we call core temperatures, are the oral and rectal kind. That's why we use those the most often. Obviously, we use oral temperatures more often. And we can measure temperature in 2 scales, in Fahrenheit and Celsius. Now, you guys are used to Fahrenheit, but some medical facilities, because of having to convert things and everything that we use in the medical field is in metric. Sometimes you may hear that some facilities use the Celsius system. So like if you have your temperature taken at Hershey Medical Center, for instance, they may tell you that your temperature is 37.6, okay? Either or both, it's easy to convert, and there are actually formulas there in your note that you can see how we actually do convert. So we'll talk a little bit about that when I get back too. So when we measure an oral temperature, we want to make sure that we're grabbing a blue-tipped thermometer, and I'll show you those again on Wednesday when I get back. You want to make sure that the person hasn't eaten, drank, or smoked in the last 15 minutes because it can alter your findings. You have to put that under their tongue, make sure they close their mouth, and if you're using a glass thermometer though, you need to make sure they don't bite down because you don't want that glass to break in their mouth. A, quote, normal range is from 97.6 to 100.4. Now, I would say 97.6 to about 99.6 is normal, but they don't consider it a fever or hyperpyrexia until you get over 100.4. The rectal thermometer is what we use when we put it in someone's rectum. Obviously, we don't do this too often on adults. Most of the time, we use this for babies. These are taken with the red-tipped thermometer, so make sure no one ever puts a red-tipped thermometer in your mouth because those are actually rectal thermometers. Tympanic temperatures are the ones that we use in the ear. Okay, you guys probably have all had those taken at some point in time at the doctor's office. Some of you may even have them at home. The way that they work is that there is a blood supply near your eardrum called the tympanic membrane. That's the name of your eardrum. And it shares a blood supply with the hypothalamus. And remember, we said that's the control center of the brain for our temperature. So because they are so close, when we use the tympanic thermometer, we can get a relatively accurate temperature if it's done correctly. Now, you do have to be careful that you don't push that thermometer in too far, because it can cause the actual membrane of the ear to rupture, and you definitely don't want that to happen. One thing that you guys may or may not be used to is them pulling on your ear. Some places, the nurses or medical assistants or nursing assistants, they just put it in your ear and you're done. The actual correct way to do that when they put that in your ear is for an adult to pull the ear down and then put the thermometer in, and for the child to pull the ear kind of up or back and then put the thermometer in. And again, I have these that I can get out and let you guys take each other's temperatures on Wednesday if you're good. So make sure you're good for Mrs. Kimmel too. The next way that we have of measuring temperatures is axillary temperatures. So that's when we take it under the arm. For the most part, we use this for babies because it's you put it under their arm and you hold their arm down. You have to make sure there's no moisture in there. Like if you would have to try to do this on an adult, you want to make sure there's no sweat or anything like that. And then you have to hold the arm down in place. For the temporal, which it is not in your books, there's no notes on that, you just slide it across the forehead, and then you get an accurate temperature. There are things that can make somebody's temperature become abnormal, like a head injury, a stroke. The temperature around you, or the environmental temperature, is another thing that can affect it. If it's warmer outside, your temperature is going to be warmer. It makes sense. How much body fat you have, the time of day, whether you're sick or have an infection, or if you have a brain tumor. All of those things have the potential, not necessarily every single time, but they have the potential of making your temperature abnormal. So that is it. That's all the notes that I have for temperature. But if you have any questions, make sure you write them down, and I'll be sure to try to answer them Wednesday when I get back. And remember, be good for Mrs. Kimmel so that you guys can take temperatures and stuff when I get back. Okay, guys, I will talk to you later. Bye.